It's a jack-off gun. Dr. Crusher is vaporizing people with a jack-off gun. Wait, let me back up. Hello world, it's Berto Prey 5, Qapla, and welcome to my review of Star Trek Picard, Season 3, Episode 1, The Next Generation. That's the title of the episode, The Next Generation. And I really hope we've gone past the 7 or 8 seconds that YouTube requires before I can start cursing, because what the fuck did I just watch? I thought this was Terry Matalas' return to grace. Everybody has been telling me, Dave Cullen, Robert Meyer Burnett, other people, they're saying this is great Trek, or at least good Trek. And the episode, wasn't terrible, but I have no great feelings that Terry Matalas, I have said before, I never knew who Terry Matalas was before these last few weeks. I have no opinion of the guy one way or another. But everybody has been trying to reassure me Terry Matalas knows what Star Trek is about. And I went in expecting to feel that, to see that this first episode was supposed to assure me that that is true. And honestly, I'm not seeing it, because let's just start. The episode begins with Dr. Crusher on a ship called the Elos. I don't know. It's never, I Googled it. I couldn't find any reference to it in Trek before. She's on the SS Elos. I'm thinking of the pizza, but whatever it is, she's on this ship, and they're coming for her. And these enemy people dock with her ship. The computer announces that there was a docking, and they were nice enough to go through the docking port and not actually cut a hole in the hull or something. And they come in, and they're wearing these fucking bird masks. They look like Jaffa from a reimagined Stargate. And two of them, I thought there were 3. It was 2 of these guys come in, and they've got these disruptors or whatever that shoot really quick. They're like fully automatic disruptors. They're shooting pop, 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 pop. They get out like 100 shots, and they don't have to pull the trigger each time. So fully automatic disruptors, and they're set not to vaporize. They're just set to apparently wound and not kill, because Crusher gets hit almost immediately, and luckily she doesn't disappear into a cloud of dust. Whereas Dr. Crusher is fighting back with a weapon that looks very much like a next-gen phaser rifle, except you have to pump it like a current era pump shotgun. And unlike, or maybe more like a pump shotgun, you have to pump it on every fire. In fact, the act of pumping it appears to be what fires the weapon. So it is extremely difficult to aim and pump at the same time. And for a weapon that's made in the future that doesn't have any physical projectile, why would you build a weapon that you had to physically pump to fire each and every time? It makes zero sense. Whoever made this weapon clearly has no idea how guns or why guns work the way they do. A weapon that would be impossible to aim. And she has not one, she's got several of these useless fucking phaser rifles that require you pump action to shoot. And that's what she's fighting back with. Apparently she's got them set to vaporize, which, okay, I guess if you're in a life and death situation, you would have your gun set to vaporize, but she vaporizes one guy, and then the second one she shoots, he doesn't vaporize for some reason, but he falls, whether he's dead or injured. Then she comes up right on top of him and fires again to vaporize him. And if this was mostly any other character, I I could maybe forgive it, but this is Dr. Beverly Crusher, the person the most concerned about human life from the next generation, which itself was concerned about human life, like all Star Trek is. Even going back to the movies when Captain Kirk still gave the Klingon a chance to surrender instead of die on the Genesis planet. And he was like, nope, I'm never going to surrender. So Kirk had to kick him off. And I was like, well, then fuck you, buddy. And Dr. Crusher is now not kicking people, shooting people on vaporize, even though they're already injured. Fine, whatever. Obviously, something big has happened. But that's the beginning. That's how we start out the season, the series, the third season, and like this guy is the person who knows Trek, and he's got Dr. Crusher vaporizing people. He certainly doesn't know how guns work. He certainly doesn't understand the theory that you wanna point and shoot, and you would never fucking make a pump action phaser to begin with when you have things like power crystals or whatever, power banks. You don't. First off, phasers usually just hold down the button and it just shoots a beam for as long as you hold it down. Why are these guns all of a sudden pew 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 pew? I mean, I guess they just listen. It looks better. I know the answer. It looks better on TV. But so yeah, it opens. Dr. Crusher's ship is being attacked, and she, even though she fights off and kills the first two guys, the ship is like, oh, there's more ships incoming. And Dr. Crusher's like, oh no, they found us. And so, with imminent death, I guess, approaching, she decides to send a message, but does she say, computer, send a message to Picard or Admiral Picard? No. The most roundabout way ever. She first, the computer's not even called computer. On her ship, she calls it Elos or Elo, whatever her name of her ship is. Fine, whatever. Not every computer needs to be called computer. But she's like, myriad codec on frequency subspace. And again, first off, myriad's going to come up a few times. I've never heard of it. I was like, were we supposed to know what myriad meant? I mean, other than the actual definition of the word, like, was that an Easter egg, a reference to any previous thing in TNG or Trek? And as far as Memory Alpha is concerned, no, we have no idea what myriad is. The only thing myriad referenced, at least as of 4 a.m. this morning Eastern, was there was some books written having nothing to do with anything except that they took place in an alternate universe, like a universe that was neither the prime universe nor the mirror universe. It was one of those millions of other universes out there So unless maybe it's it's something, it's going to tell us what's coming in the future, which would be great to find out that we're in one of the myriad of other universes besides the Prime universe. It really doesn't have any prior meaning. But again, for somebody who should know how Trek works, we get like a screen showing up telling it myriad codic, and again, for the frequency where there should be a number, it just says subspace. And of course, then she encrypts data. She just says encrypt. I guess that's supposed to encrypt it. And she, of course, sends it to um, Admiral Picard. Oh, she also locks somebody in a room, which we're not supposed to know who that is yet, even though I think we all pretty much know who it is if you've been following anything to do with Picard. But I'll wait for that. So there's a guy locked in a room on this ship. He can't get out for some reason. I guess she purposely built a brig into her ship so that you can lock somebody in there, but they can't get out, obviously, until they need to. But for the time being, they're hopelessly locked in the room while she is single-handedly fighting off Qapla, and she gets wounded, and only, when she should be seconds away from death, she sends off a subspace message that she can't even be sure anybody will ever read or know that it was only a 1 in a billion chance that it even got noticed. But that's her entire plan, is this 1 in a billion chance her message gets received. And then God knows how long it's going to take them to get to her, because remember, the galaxy is a big place. And even on the fastest ships, I mean, it took weeks to get from Earth to Deep Space Nine, or at least a week or so, best we could tell at the time. So, the Federation is a big, big patch of space. It's not something you can transverse in an hour or a day or even a week. But whatever. Anyway, so then we get a title sequence, and the title sequence is vastly improved. None of that stupid flowers in space garbage. So though, speaking of flowers, on the Ilios, there is a scene where you see all the member berries of Beverly Crusher's life, her orchids, some award she got for fighting a plague, her late husband's briefcase, and oh, no candle. I was looking for the candle. No Sub Rosa love candle. But oh, and the theater faces from her time doing theater on the Enterprise. So a whole bunch of Beverly Crusher member berries. And for some reason, she had on her ship an LCARS display of Captain Picard's, Captain Picard's entry about the Borg, right before he became Locutus. His last entry before becoming Locutus. That was playing in a loop. There was also music playing in the background that we'll later discover was a mixtape. He doesn't call it a mixtape, but basically a mixtape that Picard given to her before they parted ways 20 years ago. Anyway, so we get the improved title sequence, and then we're we get to the painting, the Enterprise D painting that's been hanging at Chateau Picard, and we're back at the chateau. And actually, Laris is there, who I didn't think she was even in this season, but she is at least a little to send Picard off. So Laris and Picard are talking, and they're looking at this painting, and Picard all of a sudden says, I want to give it to Geordi. Now, this takes place obviously sometime after the first two seasons. And all of a sudden, Picard's ready to give it to Geordi. And we get some exposition that Geordi is running the Fleet Museum. And they talk, Laris and Picard talk about spring cleaning. And then Laris is like, no, spring cleaning is unique to you humans. And Picard is obviously getting ready to leave. They're packing up the chateau. He's sending a lot of stuff off to the museum because him and Laris are about to head to Chaltok 4, some planet somewhere. Again, I checked. I never heard of Chaltok 4. There is really nothing on it. It's a planet in the Romulan Star Empire, but there wasn't really any info on it. So I guess it survived the giant supernova that destroyed the entire Romulan Empire in the first season. But so this one planet's still around. So Picard and Laris were going to head there, and they were expecting to spend their lives together. And, that's where we were. So Picard and Laris, you could tell they were about to leave, and they're talking about, Laris comes in, and Picard's got all of his stuff boxed up to go to the museum, and he's got his flute from Inner Light, and a whole bunch of other member berries, the statue that his archaeology teacher gave him or whatever. And Laris gives us a little like, oh, it's okay to like the past. She's giving us permission as the audience to say, yeah, the past is nice, but it's the past. And Picard is like, yeah, I'm still looking to the future. Picard says he's going to write his memoirs. He's going to write his memoirs, though he's not a man who needs a legacy. You are the legacy. You don't get to choose that, but whatever. You don't. So he says he wants a new adventure. And then, of course, they cut to nighttime, because this was during the day. Now it's nighttime. There's a thunderstorm outside. And Picard is, for some reason, Terry Matalas, Picard is wearing glasses. And this annoys the heck out of me because it's the far, far future. Nobody wears glasses. And Captain Kirk wore glasses. Yes. In Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, Dr. McCoy buys antique bifocals, I believe, for Captain Kirk to wear. But that is explained that Captain Kirk has an allergy to the medication that fixes your eyes. So there's a reason that Captain Kirk had eyeglasses given to him by his doctor who knew about his allergy. So, maybe Picard has the same allergy, and maybe in the 100+ years, they didn't find a second cure or any other way of treating the eye disease. Maybe Picard has the same allergy, but that's fucking lazy. Okay. It is lazy, it's stupid, and it does not give me the hope that this person knows Trek. So Picard is wearing old-fashioned glasses, the same ones you would buy today, and he is handwriting letters with pens, with ink. Again, I would love to. I know Picard's a classic person who reads paper books, but seriously, paper, ink as a matter of course. Who's going to read these letters? I don't know who he's writing them to, but it's too much. Okay, it's too much. Anyway, so there's thunderstorm, and Picard is handwriting the letter, and you hear the chirping that we all recognize as a communicator chirp from the Next Generation. We've heard it 10 times an episode. Anytime somebody was ready to communicate in, the chirp happens, you tap the communicator, you say, Data here, or Captain Picard here, what's up? And somebody would start talking. Now, Admiral, whatever he is, Admiral Picard is sitting at his desk. There are boxes all around him because they're basically shipping his stuff to a museum. And so this was the one in a bajillion chance. He hears a chirp. He says, Computer, do you hear that? And the computer's like, yes, I hear it. It's the chirp of a communicator. In fact, it's the chirp of the Enterprise D communicator. So that's kind of weird that the communicators are specific to the ship you are on, and somehow that they're still addressable. Like you can send an email not to, you see, that's the thing, like email. It's like email. It's weird that 30 years after the Enterprise D is destroyed, you can still send an email to Captain Picard at enterprised.com. You would think that Starfleet would just say, send it to Jean-Luc Picard, and it would route it to whatever the closest device to him is at the time. But for some reason, you can specifically address old communicators where you have no idea. It's been 20 plus years since you've seen this person. You have no idea if this communicator is in their home. Is it in a museum? Is it in earshot? Did they just bury it in their backyard? Did they put it in a matter replicator to turn it into food? Beverly Crusher has not the slightest fucking idea what has happened to Picard, where this communicator would be. It is 1 in a billion chance that this communicator was in earshot when it chirped once or twice, and that was it. And if Picard wasn't awake in the middle of the night and they didn't have all of his stuff ready to go to a museum, he never would have even known she called. But of course, it all worked out. He did hear it. He asked the computer, hey, where's that sound coming from? And today, if you had an Amazon device that is always listening, I dare not speak her name, else she turn on at the moment. I think that it would have been able to hear, if you had 2 or 3 of those microphones, it could easily triangulate where in the room the sound came from and tell you, oh, it's 3 meters in front of you or whatever. But no, this computer, as fancy as it is, couldn't determine where in the room the noise was coming from. So Picard himself has to go looking through everything. And instead of looking through the box that has his old Starfleet stuff, one of the first things he starts looking through is a wooden box full of Chateau Picard wine. Like, why would the communicator be in the box of wine? But sure enough, he finally opens the box that has, apparently the only thing it has in it was his Enterprise D uniform, as if he only had one uniform the entire time he served on the Enterprise D, as if one single uniform, when they could be replicated on demand, is something anybody would have saved. Who would save a uniform when you can replicate uniforms on demand? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Less sense is that the communicator badge is still in there, obviously with a still charged battery, and that the communicator itself was in a little leather pouch, as if it had come from the factory like that, and he kept the leather pouch Starfleet gave him when they granted him a communicator, and apparently never took it back. Okay, fine. I know it makes for interesting TV, but it doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any fucking sense. And Picard says, why would anyone send a message to a more than 20-year-old Enterprise D communicator? And the computer says, I don't know why. And the problem is, it's not only more than 20 years old, it's 30 years old at least. I mean, 20 years was the end of what would have been like Nemesis. So the Enterprise D was already destroyed 20 years ago. We're talking 30 years ago when the Enterprise D crashed. And but whatever, he just knows it's more than 20 years, which it is technically. And again, as soon as it starts chirping and he looks at it, for some reason, Picard also says myriad. Myriad. What the fuck is myriad? Again, it made me think, am I missing something? But no, there's no reason Picard should look at his communicator and think myriad. I have no idea why. So it needs a passcode. It needs a passcode. So the apparently Picard either knew the passcode was myriad, or he also gives his generic password, Alpha 47 Tango, whatever it was. So either Beverly knew his password or whatever. I don't know. I don't think they understand how encryption works, but whatever. So they decrypt the communication, and it's modern Beverly Crusher telling Picard. First, she says, Hellbird, remember that, Hellbird. Then she says, trust no one, especially not Starfleet. Don't talk to Starfleet, don't talk to anyone, trust no one, Hellbird, and I'm encrypting coordinates. And message ends. So after saying, don't tell anyone, of course, Picard tells Laris, the former Romulan spy. So Laris talks it over with Picard and says, oh, well, I can tell this woman's serious. Yeah, you should probably go save her. And she's like, didn't you two used to be a couple? And he's like, yeah, we tried, but it didn't work out. So Laris, who was about to start a new life with Picard on Charltalk 4, is like, well, shit, you got to go save your old girlfriend. And so Laris realizes her and Picard are never going to be a thing, and kinds of gives him a last kiss and goodbye, Laris. We'll never see you again. In the meantime, Picard gives us some exposition about how it's been over 20 years since anybody's talked to Beverly. Him, Geordi, Riker, apparently 20 years ago, Beverly cut them all off for reasons nobody knew. It's the 24th fucking century, or 25th century now. Fucking look her up. How it takes two to tango, okay? You can't let somebody just disappear for 20 years and you are a goddamn captain, if not admiral in Starfleet, and you have no idea what happened to your dearest friend, to a romantic partner. I mean, was she kidnapped? Didn't you put in a fucking wellness check? Did you not think to do that when you could? No, she just said goodbye to everybody, and nobody heard from her for 20 years because she decided what she wanted her space. It doesn't make any sense that she could have been out of communications range or whatever for 20 years and it not cross anybody's mind to check on her. Okay. So Picard is going to go on this mission. So we pan back up to the Enterprise D painting, which Picard had originally said, send that to the museum. And Laris told the guy who was about to take it, don't you dare move that painting. That painting has to stay here. Okay. So we do this Enterprise D painting, and then we switch to what is essentially an Eagle Moss Enterprise D on a back bar, and we zoom out, and I didn't know that this was what it was supposed to be, but apparently this is Guinan's bar on Earth that's still called 10 Forward, and they're selling Enterprises off the back bar. And there's a whole bunch of these little Eagle Moss-like Enterprise D models that still have the shitty clear plastic stand. Okay, if you're in the future, give me a fucking stand, or at least make the ships, hover using magnets or something. Okay, I refuse to believe that in the 25th century, we still have to have cheap little clear plastic pieces that push into black stands to keep our tiny ships hovering just a couple inches off the ground or off the shelf. I mean, if anything would be fixed in the future, it would be those cheap little clear plastic pieces. So no, that they do not spend any time or money on. We've got dozens of these ships. Most of them are Enterprise Ds. And then we got Riker. Riker comes in for the first time, except for his time in, what was that, season 1. So he's back, and he asked the bartender, who's a young woman, he's like, why do you have so many Enterprise Ds? Or he's like, when did Guinan start selling hawking model ships? And she's like, oh, it's because of Frontier Day. Frontier Day is coming up. And there's posters on the wall for Frontier Day. And again, I was like, what the fuck is Frontier Day? And again, I tried looking up what Frontier Day is, and there was no information. Frontier Day was not a thing before this episode. Now, in this episode, you can see what it is because there's posters and whatnot. Frontier Day is 250 years, basically, since the launch of the NX-01, the original Enterprise from Star Trek Enterprise. And you've got all the other Enterprise shapes, and the original Enterprise, the NX-01, launched in, 2151, and this is 250 years later. So this is the 250th Frontier Day. They're celebrating the anniversary of the NX-01, launched in 2151, and this is the year 24 1901. So yeah, it's 250 years. And so Riker's like, well, why are there so many Enterprise Ds? And the bartender's like, oh, nobody wants those. They're the fat ones. Nobody wants the fat ones. And Riker is like annoyed. And so, rightfully so. The Enterprise Ds. That was pretty funny because I think for the most part, I don't think, at least among classic Trek fans, I would say, I don't think the Enterprise D is anyone's favorite Enterprise. Maybe it is. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are so many TNG fans. I'm sure there are people who love the D. I know there's people out there who love the D, but who love the Enterprise D specifically, I don't know. It was never my favorite. Okay, I'm an A man. I'm a motion picture Enterprise A all the way. That's my favorite Enterprise. And then there's all the others. And then, other than the J, the god awful J, that hopefully is retconned out of existence, and other than the JJ, God, those aren't barely even Enterprises. The D is like my third least favorite Enterprise. So Captain Picard meets Admiral Picard meets Riker at this bar, which is supposed to be Guinan's bar. But to be honest, I didn't notice anything the first time I watched the episode to tell me that this was Guinan's bar on Earth, other than Riker saying Guinan's hawking ships now. Like I didn't know where they were meeting. So Picard's like, thank you for coming, taking your time to see me, Will. So he's like, especially like this. So I guess Riker was already on Earth because of Frontier Day coming up. So that's why it didn't take him time to get there. And, on Earth, fine. You can walk from France to Los Angeles through a transporter gate. That's fine. There's no time worries there. But Riker's like talking about how Frontier Day, it's like, it's a parade through space. Who wants to hear some old fart drone on about going boldly for the last 250 years? And I'm yelling, I do. Terry Matalas. I want to hear about going boldly for the last 250 years. I want to hear somebody tell that story. And Riker's saying it like that. Who wants to hear that story? That's not the story we're going to tell. That was the subtext. We're not doing this for the people who want to hear about going boldly for 250 years. We're going to tell a different story. And that, again, that didn't sit well with me. It's all about the subtext. And the subtext is telling me they're not going to tell me the story I want. Also during this scene, Riker heavily implies that things between him and Deanna are not working out. Picard's like, I'm sorry to take you away from your family. And he's like, actually, Deanna and whatever his daughter's name is, they think they'll be happy to get away from me for a while. They'll be happy with some time apart. So then Picard tells Riker, who is a captain in Starfleet, although he doesn't have a current command, he is a captain in Starfleet, even though he was specifically told not to tell Starfleet. He tells Riker about the message that Beverly Crusher sent. And again, Riker's like, oh, Myriad, that was the good old days when our comms were compromised on Rigel 6. And Picard corrects him, no, Rigel 7. And I swear the recently released short, The Reverse Genie of Rigel 9, it was just coincidence. just coincidence. So, when our comms are compromised, and again, I looked back through the memory alpha, I could see nothing about compromised comms in the Rigel system anywhere at any time. So then Picard says, so the word Hellbird, which was all Crusher said, he's like, I have no idea what that means, Will. And Riker's like, Hellbird? Well, of course you wouldn't know what that means. We got a computer virus while you were Locutus, and it added 3 to all the numbers in our systems. Like, what the fuck is he talking about? A computer virus on the Enterprise while Picard was Locutus? When did that happen? They just pulled this stuff out of their ass. This didn't happen. We saw what happened on the Enterprise. You would think that the Enterprise gets hit with a computer virus and it just doesn't make the fucking episode. I was just, we're always fighting off computer viruses. The fact that we're under attack by the Borg, that doesn't make the logs. And the fact that the only thing the virus did was add 3 to all the numbers. So the coordinates that Beverly Crusher sent Picard basically to an empty part of space. So Riker is like, well, we just have to add 3 to all of these coordinates. And sure enough, now that's exactly a system, the Righton system. So Beverly sent a message to Picard that had a 1 in a quadrillion chance of ever being read. And then even if he did catch it, she gives him specific orders not to talk to anybody in Starfleet, when only somebody in Starfleet would have been able to know what coordinates she was speaking about. And luckily for her, Picard went to Riker, one of only maybe a dozen people who might have known what the fuck Hellbird meant. And so they get the correct coordinates. And so now they just have to get a ship. But because it's on it's just outside of Federation space. It's not in, it's just outside Federation space. The Righton system. It is too far and too dangerous to charter a ship. What? Picard season 1 only happened, in screen time, less than 2 years ago. Okay? Less than 2 years ago, he chartered a ship to go outside Federation space. Now, to go to the edge of Federation space, it's too far and too dangerous to charter a ship? Whatever. So what are they going to do? Well, Jesus, I guess they're going to do what Captain Kirk always did when he needed a ship. They're going to steal a ship. Well, not quite steal a ship. But hey, it's Frontier Day. Isn't that convenient? So Riker is like, let's I got an idea. We'll go get a ship. And as they walk out of the bar, there's this very sketchy looking dude who you can tell was listening to their conversation from afar and following them. And he for some reason, drops an Enterprise D in his drink and leaves. Okay. So then we go to cut to another scene, and we're around another planet, and the planet's name is Matalas Prime. Well, aren't you special? Terry Matalas named a planet after himself, Matalas Prime. And maybe this is, if I was going to name a planet after me, it would be, a beautiful, great planet. But no, this is a planet of filth and destitution. Or at least District 6 is, because we're in District 6. And it's all drugs and prostitution, and people are buying disruptors out in the open. And like Rafi is there. She's clearly playing a drug addict. Like, I know Rafi, nobody is going to convince me that Rafi has fallen back into being a drug abuser and made her way to Matalas Prime. Okay, because I would want that to happen. But no, I know I'm not going to get that wish. So I know as soon as I see Rafi pretending to be addicted to drugs, that she is indeed pretending to be addicted to drugs. And she's walking around this city that is just another Stardust city. Remember again from the earlier seasons of Picard, Stardust City was like space Las Vegas. So why don't just reuse Stardust City? But fine, it has to be Matalas Prime. And she's walking around and there's literally people selling drugs. Like, hey, get your drugs here. I got the drugs. I got the best drugs this side of the galaxy. No, like honestly, literally the guy says, hey, I got your Tamarian drugs here. Come get your Tamarian drugs. I got them. Tamarians are the from the Next Generation, the people who was like Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra people. Apparently they've got great drugs. So Rafi goes to a bar where there's a blue guy, not Bolan, but blue. And at first I was a little confused as to who he was. And then later I'm even more confused. But this blue guy is eating what appears to be like sushi or something. And Rafi sits next to him and gives him a data pad, and you get a cash register sound. So she's buying, and he gives her some drugs, and she's ready to leave, and then she fights with herself, and she comes back, and she's like, hey, you know things, right? You can help me. Like, why the fuck would your drug dealer want to help you? They're selling you drugs. That's all they're there for. So Rafi's like, yo, you hear things, man, right? You're like an oracle. She's like, I hear things too. And she's like, oh man, I'm out of Starfleet, right? Like, obviously you're out of Starfleet, you fucking drug addict. Nobody thinks you're in Starfleet. And she's like, yo, I'm out. She's like, but you could help me get back in. Why would your drug dealer want to help you get back into Starfleet? She's like, you could tell me, like, yo, what do you know about anything? About, what do you know about illegal activity? Like, yeah, clearly you're not wearing a wire. And he's like, why am I going to help you? And she doesn't even say that. He's like, get the fuck away from me. So then she comes back with her compad, and it's got more money. And he's like, yo, where'd you get all this money from? And she's like, this is my life savings. I'm all in. So he presses his finger to it to take payment. So however much money he just took. He's like, all I can tell you is there's something about going down about the Red Lady. And she's like, the Red Lady, what's that? A buyer? A seller? Oh, Rafi said she heard that there's these something stolen, this technology stolen from the Daystrom Institute that could be used as a weapon. And okay, so that's what she wanted to know. And the guy's like, at first he's like, get away from me, don't talk about that. She's like, no, I heard about it. And so finally he's like, he had to be bought. So he accepts payment, which is apparently a lot of money. It's apparently Rafi's life savings. And all he tells her is, all I can tell you about this is that there's something going down soon, something about the Red Lady. And she's trying to get more out of him. And he's like, get the fuck away from me. You're going to get us all killed. And he's like, leave. I don't ever want to see you again. So Rafi paid an untold fortune just for the hot tip of something called the Red Lady. And she has no idea what it is. So Rafi starts walking out. She's still pretending she's a drug addict. Finally, she takes a few steps out. She goes like maybe 20 feet from the building. She straightens herself up. You can see she's clearly not a drug addict. She's in full control of her faculties. And she takes out an old style TOS communicator, pops it open, and again, clearly in earshot of dozens of people, all criminals, says out loud, Starfleet intelligence officer requesting debrief. Oh my fucking God. That's not how spies work. You don't go out into public and say, hey, I'm a Starfleet intelligence officer. I need a debrief on your fucking giant ass communicator, when all this stuff would be clandestine. If you were really in Starfleet intelligence, you wouldn't even have a visible communicator, let alone a fucking TOS level communicator. And you wouldn't be making this announcement in public. And then she looks at the drugs she just bought, like she's thinking, maybe I should get back onto doing drugs. But she just drops it on the floor and walks away. It would be like an undercover cop buying a pound of cocaine, or a brand, I don't know, however the fuck they sell cocaine. I know they don't sell it by the pound. But buying a whole mess of cocaine and then just leaving it on the floor and walking away because they have another mission. For anyone to find. Kid could have find that drugs, and now she's going to turn someone else into an addict. Now then we go back to Riker and Picard, and they're in a shuttle. They don't say how they got that shuttle, but they're in a shuttle headed up to space dock, and they're going over their quote unquote plan. And Riker is like, listen, you're an admiral, I'm a captain. We're going to go aboard the Titan, which is Riker's old ship. We're just going to tell them we're here for an unplanned inspection. And we just got to convince them to take us to the edge of Federation space. And then Picard's like, and then we got to take a shuttle out of the Titan and go meet with Beverly. And Riker's like, yeah. And he's like, this new Titan, it's not the new Titan. It's been remodeled. It's been retrofit. He calls it's been refit to the Neo-Constitution class. Now, the problem is, we saw what the Titan is supposed to look like on Star Trek Lower Decks. Now, fine, Lower Decks is a cartoon, but what it looked like on Star Trek Lower Decks and what it looks like now are completely incompatible. No amount of retrofitting is like trying to make an O-berth into a Galaxy class. No amount of retrofitting is ever going to make that happen. So they should have said that the Titan A, mind you, is a new ship. I don't know why they want to tell us it was retrofit. But whatever, I guess Lower Decks, if any proof you needed is not really canon, this is it. So I guess we're not supposed to know what the Titan originally looked like, but now it looks Neo-Constitution. I'll be honest, it is a beautiful ship. It's a beautiful ship. The music is awesome. You got the old music from the Star Trek movies when they come up on the Enterprise, and it almost almost brings a tear to my eyes. It's a beautiful ship. But um, uh, Captain Shaw, honestly, the guy's a dick. The guy's a dick. We don't get to him yet. So first, uh, Riker or Picard's like, I don't know this Captain Shaw guy. And Riker's like, yeah, he's going to be a bit of a hard shell to crack. He's like, but you do know, you are familiar with their first officer. And it's a surprise to Picard that the first officer of the Titan is 7 of 9. And like later on, 7 of 9, Riker, like, why would you how dare you talk to Captain Picard like that, or Admiral Picard like that? And Seven's like, I'm not talking to him as Admiral Picard, I'm talking to him as a friend. Well, how do you not know your friend is first officer of the Titan? So, because this came blindsided Picard, that Seven was first officer of the Titan. So they come on board, and Picard is, even though Riker already said to Picard that you know the first officer, meaning Riker knows her as well, Picard starts to introduce Seven to Riker, and he says, Will, this is Seven. And Seven cuts him off immediately and says, Commander Annika Hansen, sir. And Picard looks at her like, what the fuck? And she's like, yeah, Annika Hansen. Captain Shaw prefers I use the name Hansen, sir. So it was a weird moment. Okay, fine. If she wants to be called Seven, fine. The captain is dictating names now. This was supposed to represent, I'm told, or supposedly, dead naming, like when you call a trans person by their given name at birth, even though they've changed their name. And so now you're supposed to call them by the name they chose. So even though it's the complete kind of opposite thing here, but it's not. Whatever. I don't give a shit what name you call somebody, but I think that they should have some say in it if you're an adult. Okay, I know tradition is you take the name your parents gave you, and I'm not one to break with that tradition, but it's been legal for, as far as I know, almost forever to change your name. And I'm sure it's legal in the Federation. So if somebody wanted to legally change their name, I'm sure there's a process for it. I don't see what business it would be of the captain of the ship to decide what name somebody uses. Now, I'll grant you, it's kind of stupid to call yourself 7 of 9 aboard a Federation ship when you are no longer a Borg, but if that's what she wants to do, so be it. Anyway, she welcomes him aboard. Now, originally, like, okay, why isn't the captain here to see an admiral aboard? And Seven basically explained, and by the way, even in the closed captioning, they call her 7 of 9 or 7, even though she says, she cuts him off and says, call me Annika Hansen, call me Commander Hansen. So Seven brings him up to the bridge where the captain still isn't there. And the bridge is so dark. The ship outside is beautiful. Inside, it is so ridiculously dark on this bridge. It's like Star Trek Discovery again. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Riker gets a good joke in that it still has that new ship smell. Even though it's clearly not a new ship, he said it's a retrofit, but whatever. Anyway, you get all these people all around the bridge, and they're kind of in awe that Picard and Riker are there. And they all go back to their work, except one woman keeps looking at Picard with this big grin on her face. And Picard goes to Seven, is there something wrong with that ensign? And Seven looks at her and it says, Ensign LaForge, eyes on your station. And he says, LaForge? Oh my God, that's Geordie's daughter. And Riker comes over. He's like, yo, you're LaForge's daughter, right? Yeah. He's like, didn't they have a nickname for you in the academy? And she's like, oh, please don't. He's like, yeah, that's Crash LaForge. And she's like, she's like, I was a cadet, sir. He's like, yeah, you crashed the shuttle. She's like, I was a cadet. He's like, no, you crashed it twice. And that was your nickname, Crash LaForge. And like everybody on the bridge is just like, oh my fucking God. She's never going to live that down now. Even Picard was like, Will, what are you doing here? So then they decide, oh, it's time to leave space dock. And the captain never comes out. The captain doesn't come out for his beautiful ship that has just been retrofit to the Neo-Constitution class to leave space dock. The captain is too busy, Seven said, going over his logs. He doesn't even come out to the bridge to see them out of space dock. So Annika Hansen, Seven, gives the pleasure of leaving space dock to Admiral Picard, who in turn says, no, why don't you do it? Seven. And so she sits down in the captain's seat, and luckily there's 3 seats. And luckily the captain isn't there. So Picard and Riker and Seven have seats, and they all sit down, and Seven tells them to leave space dock, and in a scene very similar to when the Enterprise leaves space dock, ahead this, whatever, the ensign takes them out, and Picard tells Seven, hey, don't you think you should inform engineering that we're going to be going to warp 9.99? 9.99. And Seven says, oh, that's all automated now because it's the future. You don't have to tell engineering. It's all automated. So like Picard's like impressed. Oh wow, something's happened. It's impressed. Now, it's a little weird that they have to prime defensive shields. I don't know what the hell that means. Then they go out, they leave space dock, and for all the upgrades to space dock and the ship, again, we get a picture of how the ship is the space dock doors are just barely big enough for the ship to fit through. And we get a beautiful scene of the ship leaving space dock, and then Seven says engage, and they warp away. Then we get to the scene, and now Captain Shore, Seven said when they came on board that Captain Shore was busy doing his logs, but he invites them to dine with him tonight. So they were going to dinner at Captain Shaw's. So the next scene we see is Captain Shaw is already eating dinner, and he's got a very fancy dinner, and he's clearly already eating. So you're thinking, oh, did they get there late? And so Seven comes in with Picard and Riker, and she announces them to Captain Shaw, and Picard sees him already eating, and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Are we late? And Shaw's like, no, you guys aren't late. You're right on time. He's like, your reputations just preceded you so much, I started eating first. So you're like, okay, this guy is a total dick. So basically, Picard brings a bottle of wine. Picard brings a bottle of wine from Chateau Picard. He gives it to the captain. He's like a small gift. And the captain looks at it. He's like, oh, Chateau Picard. And he puts it down on the side. He's like, I'm more of what is it? a Malbec guy. I'm more of a Malbec guy. Now I had to look up what Malbec was. It's a different type of wine. Apparently not the type of wine they grow at Chateau Picard. So he's like a big FU to Picard, like, yeah, I don't want your shitty wine. And so Picard says, yeah, they're doing some final inspections before Frontier Day, and the ship is gonna go here, go there, and then they're gonna do final inspection at Deep Space 4. And Captain Shore looks at him and says, Deep Space 4 has been shut down for a year now. And Picard is all embarrassed. And nobody's saying anything until Seven finally steps in and says, I believe the Admiral means Deep Space 11. And he's like, oh, yes, of course. He laughs that off. Of course I meant Deep Space 11. And Captain Shore is just like, no, we're not going to do that. And like, so Riker's like, we want you to go to the Ritol system, which is the system right next to where Beverly is, and then head over to final inspection. And Shore's like, why would I do that? That's in the opposite direction I'm supposed to go. It'd take twice as long. And Riker's like, yeah, but if you go twice as fast, then you can do it in the same amount of time. And Shore's just like, no, I'm not going to do it. And like, he's like, no. Picard is like, no. Like, what do you mean, no? He's like, I'm an admiral. And Shore is like, yeah, you're a retired admiral. He's like, by the way, congrats on that. And then Riker's like, well, I'm a captain. He's like, yeah, you're a captain without a ship. I'll be honest, Shore's a dick, but I kind of admired him here at this point. Because you're right. Why should he listen? First, if Picard is a retired admiral, why are they even trying to do this? It makes very little sense. When Shaw says no, we get a double facepalm from Picard. And obviously, the only person there who gives a shit what they're saying is Seven. And at the end of dinner, which comes very, very quick. I mean, I don't think they even get served food, but Shore's like, oh, I'm going to sleep. I'm saying no to you guys. The people I take orders from give actual orders, are actual officers. They're above our pay grade. And then as a last FU, he's like, by the way, I hope you like your sleeping quarters. It was the best we could do on short notice. And although this is a jump ahead, of course, they've got fucking bunk beds in the shittiest quarters on the ship. But whatever. So then we go back to Rafi. And Rafi is looking at video of what I assume is her granddaughter. Now, her granddaughter should be less than 2 years old, maybe just turning 2. But for some reason, her granddaughter is 4 years old now. Looks to be closer to 4 years old. Now, granted, her granddaughter is part Romulan, so maybe they mature a little faster. Okay, fine, whatever. But anyway, in the middle of her looking at her video of her granddaughter, she gets a message, and her handler is talking to her. And her handler from Starfleet, it's clearly an AI, okay? It is clearly a robot or an AI. There is no real handler. I think we all know that, but whatever. The handler is talking to her through the communications on what I believe is the La Sirena. Honestly, I'm not 100% sure. I believe that Rafi somehow got Rios's old ship and is using it for her Starfleet intelligence mission. I suspect that an AI contacted Rafi and she's not in Starfleet, that this isn't Starfleet intelligence, that this is just some rogue AI who is somehow found Rafi to do its bidding and whatever. Anyway, this handler is saying, Rafi says, the Orion gave me the red lady. So now I'm a little concerned because Orions are green. They're famously green. This guy was like Bovian blue. Why would he be an Orion? Maybe there's blue Orions. I didn't double check, but every Orion I've ever remember seeing is green. So another little problem I have. Anyway, Rafi is yelling. She wants a face-to-face. Of course, the AI can't meet her face-to-face, so it says denied. And Rafi then says the most stupidest words. You can't imagine how hard it is for me to live in this world or something, meaning that to be a drug addict or to play a drug addict, that it's really especially hard for her. And she's dealing with what she believes to be Starfleet intelligence. Like Starfleet intelligence doesn't know about her history, and the AI voice says, of course I know how hard it is. And then it shows her, Rafi, her own record, and it highlights that Rafi was, kicked out of Starfleet for substance abuse, insubordination, paranoia, and it highlights all this stuff on her record. And like, what do you think? You think you're working for Starfleet intelligence and Starfleet intelligence doesn't know about your very public history? Like what surprise? And like Rafi was taken aback. She's like, oh, you're very thorough. Yeah, you know shit. That's the point. And then, anyway, then the AI that's not an AI or whatever it is says, you need to find the red lady. I'm pretty sure there's going to be an imminent attack. Find the red lady. But Rafi just got done saying she did 23 searches and she couldn't figure out what the red lady meant. But just get back to work. Keep finding the red lady. Okay, fine. So then we go back, and that's when we see Picard and Riker on the bunk beds. And these are shittiest bunk beds. And so Picard is talking about how it's been, he never thought it would be 20 years since he saw Beverly. And now he's worried, what if they're too late? And then Seven wakes them up via the intercom and says, I'm sorry to interrupt your sleep, even though they weren't sleeping. Can you come talk to me? So they go into like the ready room or something with Seven, and it's just her and them. And Seven likes, I want to speak freely. And she's like, are you guys going to tell me what the hell's going on? And she says, Picard, you and Janeway convinced me to join Starfleet. Like this is all their fault. And I'm remembering to Picard season 2, the end of season 2, it didn't look like Seven needed any convincing. It didn't look like Seven needed any convincing, but fine. Now she's going to blame Picard and Janeway and she hates her new life. She hates working under Captain Shaw because Captain Shaw is a dick. And he doesn't let her use the name she wants. And he doesn't let her run around the galaxy being a Fenris Ranger anymore. And blah, 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 blah. I've got to blame somebody. I can't blame myself for my own decisions. So I blame Picard and Janeway. But then, as luck would have it, Seven brought them to the Righton system. And so Picard, so Seven's like, I need to know what you guys are talking about and what's really going on. And of course, Picard, again, after Beverly told him, don't tell anyone in Starfleet what we're doing, Picard tells Seven exactly what they're doing. Even though, again, Beverly said, don't tell anyone in Starfleet. And Riker's like, we didn't want to tell you because we didn't want to get you in trouble. And Seven's like, well, it's too effing late now. She hates her life. So they brought them to the Righton system. And of course, the Righton system is a nebula. And of course, there's thunderstorms in space, which are fine, except for the fact that you could hear the thunder. You can hear the thunder on the ship. And the thunder wakes up the captain. Captain Shore is woken up from the sound of thunder from a nebula outside his window. So he wakes up. He's like, what the fuck? And he doesn't say what the fuck. He says, what the hell's going on? Or whatever. And he comes up to the bridge and he yells at Seven. He's like, you just ruined your career. Blah, 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 blah. And yet he leaves her in charge. He leaves her in charge. She disobeyed his orders, and he leaves her in charge, and leaves her in charge of the whole ship again. Anyway, Seven told Picard and Riker that the ensign guarding a particular particular shuttlecraft would be called away in 4 minutes. So, and of course they were. So Riker and Picard steal a shuttle and leave the ship. Now, while the captain's on the bridge, of course, they get notice that somebody is taking a shuttle without permission. Does the captain say, use the tractor beam? No. He just lets them go. He says, son of a bitch. He does say son of a bitch. I laughed a bit. He says, son of a bitch. But they don't use the tractor beam. They don't make any attempt to recall the shuttle. They don't even hail the shuttle and threaten them to come back. No, he just lets them leave. So then we go back to Rafi, and she's searching for the red lady, and she's like, maybe I'm doing this wrong. She's like, and she tells the computer, show me all big events coming up. And the computer comes back with 3 events. And you would think that it would show the events in the order. If I was asking a computer what events were coming up, you would think you would put the events in the order. The first one would be the most closest event. So 3 events come up, and only 3 events are coming. The Gratitude Festival, the Empire Union Day, and Frontier Day. And Rafi, for some reason, knows it's not the first 2. She swipes left or right, whatever, and they disappear. It's not Gratitude Festival. It's not Empire Union Day. For reasons, it must be Frontier Day. And then she gets, a story about Frontier Day, and it's a statue of Captain Rachel Garrett. And it's a Rachel Garrett statue dedication ceremony. And the statue is reddish pink. I think it's pink, but clearly it's supposed to be red. And the red lady clearly is supposed to be the statue, the red lady. Anyway, the red lady is a statue that's being dedicated. And Rachel Garrett, by the way, is, of course, the captain of the Enterprise C that we saw in yesterday's Enterprise. So it only makes sense on Frontier Day, that seems to celebrate all the enterprises of the past, that the captain of the Enterprise C is getting a statue. Now, this is where I'm a little confused. It appears that this statue dedication is on Matalas Prime, that Rafi happens to be on the planet where this attack is going to take place. And this Matalas Prime, which has obviously what they call it, section district 6. District 6 is like a ghetto of prostitution and drugs. But apparently District 7 is a beautiful, pristine Starfleet area. And she tells the ship to chart a course to District 7. And I'm like kind of confused, like chart a course. Like I thought she'd be going between planets. But apparently she just has to go over like a district, like move from one part of the planet to the other. Like, why not just beam down? Anyway, she flies over to this other part of the planet, and there's this big, beautiful, round building that if you saw the trailer, you know gets destroyed. And she's trying frantically to reach someone in Starfleet. She wants somebody in Starfleet to pick up the phone, and nobody's answering her. And then Rafi watches in horror as this like beam of light comes down, circles the building, and the building falls into the ground into a hole, and then falls out of the sky from above. And this is clearly the quantum tunneling device technology that she was worried that was stolen from the Daystrom Institute. And it could have been used as a weapon, and it was. She was too late, and this building in District 7 basically gets 9/11'd in front of her face. So then we go back to Riker and Picard. They're closing in. They're in the shuttlecraft that they stole. They're closing in on Beverly's ship. Riker can barely scan through the nebula, but he says there's at least one life sign, maybe two. And then Picard is like, oh, I'm uploading Beverly's last medical profile from Starfleet Medical. And it says, oh, it's identical. It's her life signs. So over 20 years, your life signs don't change a bit. Identical. Identical. Makes no sense. Never seen that before anyway. So they're sure Beverly's on board. They board the ship. Luckily that there happens to be a place that the shuttlecraft just perfectly fits. They get on. The ship appears abandoned. There's music playing, and Picard instantly recognizes the music. He's like, he doesn't say mixtape, but he's like, this is from a compilation of songs I made for Beverly 20 years ago or 30 years ago. So that's why I said it says mixtape. By 10 seconds of one song, he knows that she's been listening to his mixtape the entire time. Anyway, Picard, they break up. Picard goes to the bridge, and on the bridge is Beverly inside a stasis chamber. And he sees that it's Beverly. And then Riker comes walking slowly, and you can see there's a guy holding a gun to Riker's head. And does Riker yell to Picard to get down or to save yourself or anything like that? No. Riker brings the guy with the gun right up into Picard, potentially killing them both. But luckily, of course, the guy doesn't want to kill him. And Picard knows the guy is a good guy because he sees that Beverly had to be helped into this stasis chamber because the controls are on the outside. So obviously the person there wanted help. Of course, Riker didn't know that initially, and Riker elbows the guy in the face as soon as Picard talks his phaser down. Anyway, so like, well, who are you? And of course, we get the big reveal. It's her son. This guy is supposed to be her 20-year-old son. Beverly hasn't talked to anybody for 20 years because she got pregnant and decided to raise a kid without ever talking to any of her old friends. For whatever reason, she didn't want anybody to know she was pregnant. Oh, also, while Riker is walking around this ship, they look at the ashes of the two people that Beverly vaporized. And Riker's like, have you ever seen ashes like this from a phaser? And Picard says, no. So Riker knows those ashes are the remains of a person. And Riker puts his hand in the ashes and just like drops them like he's playing with sand on the beach. These are fucking human remains. And Riker is playing with them like he'd play with sand, just draining it. What are you doing? That's disgusting. Anyway, her son is all pissed because another ship, you would think it was the Titan, but no, another ship is in the nebula. And he's like, you must have led them directly to us. And he's like, what are you talking about? He's like, who's after you? And he opens the blast shield. He's like, look for yourself. And it's this big, giant ship, menacing looking ship that almost looks like the Minotaur from Nemesis to me, but it isn't. But whatever it is, I suspect that's the ship that has Amanda Plummer in it, though we don't know. They don't tell us who's on the ship. We just see this big ship right in front of the relatively small ship that Picard and Riker and Beverly and her son are on. And of course, the Titan is not very far away. I'm sure they'll come to the rescue next episode. But that was it. End of episode. And this is the episode that's supposed to bring me back to Trek. This is what I've heard wonderful, wonderful stuff about from so many people for so long. Maybe if we're 2 or 4 or 6 episodes in, maybe it is good. But I'll be honest, I was a bit disappointed. I don't feel strongly that Terry Matalas has any strong love for Trek, or even that he knows Trek all that well. I mean, there are some glaring issues here. And frankly, I believe I rated the first episode of Picard season 1 as a 9. I don't think I would rate this one as a 9. It wasn't bad. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are problems. It wasn't crap by any means. But it also wasn't great. I mean, I think this is a 7.5. I mean, I might do it as an 8 because it's a whole new season, but I don't think this is a 9, and certainly not a 10 out of 10. I feel like they're destroying the character of Dr. Crusher, unfortunately. Now she's becoming a murderer just like Seven was. And okay, now they sprung a kid on us. I'm sure that's Picard's son. I think everybody figures that's Picard's son. I think everybody figures that that's an AI controlling Rafi. And I think we all know Seven will become probably captain by the end of the series. Probably Shaw probably gets killed, and Seven probably becomes captain, or Seven leaves Starfleet and just decides to do something else. Seven and Rafi probably get back together. Who knows? I don't really care. So I just don't care. But I'll be watching. I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. And I really can't believe that a jack-off gun is basically the series opens with Dr. Crusher firing a gun she has to jack off to shoot. Jesus Christ. What have we become? Qapla all. Till next time. Bird. out.